you've sorted out your technical issues, which I think you have, it's over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Noah. I really appreciate everybody taking out the time to coming to listen to me. Yes, as Noah explained, I'm an attorney. I work with Noah, and you know, labour is what I do. Labour is what I specialise in. And today we are actually going to be having a chat about domestic workers. So, in my time as an attorney and having around, I've come to realise that a lot of people actually don't know, you know, what they need to do in respect of the domestics, and do we need to do contracts? What do we need to do? So I've put together this little presentation. I'm sorry that I can't make it any bigger. Let me see if I can and see if the computer's not gonna bomb out on me. Okay, great, awesome. Alrighty. So there we go. Oops, I pressed too many for. There we go. Okay, so in terms of just a formal introduction, it is basically, like I said, just what do you do when you basically employ a new domestic worker? So I want to emphasize the fact that it's a new domestic worker. When you have one currently employed, you know, there's certain other avenues that you need to take. However, what I want to impress upon you guys today is that what is the minimum requirements? Because remember, the law deals in minimum requirements, not maximum requirements. So if you are doing more than what I've been telling you tonight, you're on the right track and you're doing the right thing in terms of your domestic worker. Okay, so who is a domestic worker? So I've made it very easy for everybody there. It is everyone that is considered people working in the home. So that would be your nanny, that would be the lady that's looking after your little ones during the day when you are not there, before they go to your like preschool and things like that. Your gardener also falls under the definition for a domestic worker. If anybody is lucky enough to have a private driver, that would also fall under a domestic. That's not an Uber driver, a private driver. And then yes, just when you hire somebody, please remember, everyone, that you need to basically put their terms and conditions in a contract, or have a proper employment contract in place that they've signed or that you've explained to them. Now, the definition that I got here, I actually got from the Department of Labour. So if you have any questions surrounding that, you can wait until the end and just ask your questions then, if that's okay, just so that we don't overload my poor computer here. All right, now I'm just going to go through some small things. Your ordinary hours, for example, so that's the hours that your domestic works. So for them to fall under the Act, they have to work 48 hours a week, which is your 9 hours per day for 5 days a week, or your 8 hours per day for more if they work on a Saturday or a Sunday as well. Okay. And in here, that goes along with their ordinary hours, is obviously overtime. Okay, so overtime, the sectoral determination, which is it's like a special terms and conditions that was enacted by the Department of Labour. They say that overtime, they can't work more than 15 hours overtime in 1 week, or 12 hours a day. So that can't work more than 12 hours a day. In respect of overtime, that does not include a Sunday or a public holiday. I know people are going to ask me a lot of questions about Sundays. We are going to get to that, I promise. So in terms of ordinary hours, I just have a little example. So for example, if your domestic works from a Monday to a Friday, it's 8 to 5, and that would be your 8 hours inclusive and then your 1 hour lunch, sorry. So that makes up your 9 hours for a 5-day week. Okay, and just before we go to Sundays and public holidays, overtime, in respect of that, if you ask your domestic come in earlier, the time before 8 would be considered overtime. If you ask them to stay late, anything past that 5 o'clock example that I gave, that would be considered overtime. Right, so next up is Sundays and public holidays. All right. So Sundays is pretty normal in terms of the basic conditions. It's twice the hourly rate. However, this is now where the catch comes in. With a lot of people who keep Shabbos, I know that then your domestic doesn't work on a Saturday, so they don't. So then their Sunday becomes their Saturday day, basically. Then it's considered an ordinary work day or an ordinary work weekend, and then they actually only get 1.5 times. Then it's considered overtime pay. Yeah, if you have any questions in terms of that, I'm more than happy to help you. Otherwise, if your domestic works on a Saturday, Sunday is double pay, just like everybody else. Now, public holidays, in terms of the sectoral determination and in terms of what the Labour Department has stated, domestics are not allowed to work on public holidays without an agreement. Okay, so if they do work and that's how it works. All right, so unless you have something, so my suggestion always is unless it's something really important, they don't need to work on a public holiday. All right, so wages. If your domestic works more than 27 hours in a week, or if they work more than that, the Labour Department usually directs that you can pay by day, by week, or by month. Okay, so generally for us normal people, it's usually easier to pay per month, which is not an issue. In terms of what they get paid per day, you have to work it out. If they work for 4 hours or less, they get paid for the full 4 hours. So if they work 2 hours in the day, you still have to pay them a minimum of 4. Okay, but these who comes in on what we call piece jobs, which are only coming in on 1 day a week or 2 days a week. All right. These stipulations that I've got on this slide is only for people who were working in terms of a table rate. So the interesting thing about domestics and how they used to work is that you used to pay them an hourly rate based on where you live. For example, if you lived in Joburg and Cape Town, you actually paid the highest rate in comparison to people who employed a domestic in Durban or Bloemfontein. Act that came in, and I'm pretty sure everybody's read all about it. It's been in the news quite a lot. The tables have actually fallen away. So that's where I explain the tables. But because of the Minimum Wage Act, it was completely done away with. And the actual minimum wage for a domestic is 15 Rand 57 as of the 1st of March. And in terms thereof, that's how you work it out. So it's 15 Rand 57, 1 hour's work. And when you work out your wages, that's technically the calculation that you have to use going forward. Luckily, they made life easy for us because the tables were really confusing at this point in time. All right. So in terms of the Labour Department, like I said, they actually still have a section where it says that you can pay with a check, but I don't think any one of us has a check anymore. I think everything's done by EFT. However, if you do give them cash, you need to do it during work hours in an envelope, and there has to be a pay slip. This is very important. They have made the rules in such a way that they want domestic workers to be treated just like normal employees. For example, if you worked in a bank, if you worked anywhere else, you would get a pay slip. So they also have determined that everybody needs to get a pay slip, and that includes your domestics. All right, like I said, pay slips must be given. So in terms of the payslip, there's a specific way that it's set out. And obviously, me being who I am, I can give you a template for a nominal fee. Otherwise, you can make your own. Just make sure that you follow the rules and make sure that you put in all the possible information that you can, which is usually your name and address, your employee's name and address if they don't live with you, the amount of leave they've accumulated, the deductions you make, and all of that needs to be contained in your payslip, just like with anybody else who's an employee. Okay, can you make deductions? All right, yes, you can, but there are very specific things that you can make deductions for and things that you cannot make for. So let's go through the things that you can. So, for example, I've had in my experience, when your domestic says that, oh, next week I'm not going to be here, and you say, but I didn't give you leave, and they leave anyway, it's called, the military term is AWOL, absent without leave. And for that, because you didn't tell them that they're allowed to go, or there wasn't an arrangement made, you're allowed to make deductions for the days that they were absent. Okay. In terms of accommodation, you're allowed to make a deduction for that, but as it states there, no more than 10%. Okay. In terms of any other deductions, this is where a lot of our new things come in. So agreed deductions would be if you've taken out a funeral plan on behalf of your domestic, if you've got medical aid for them, pensions, there's quite a few things that, you can get insurance for them now, which is very interesting. And then another deduction you can make is loans. So if you've if you've lent them any money, you of course they should be paying it back, and you're fully entitled to deduct it. But once again, only 10% of their wages can be deducted in 1 month. Now, the last one is any court mandated deductions. So for what does that mean? It means that if they come with a court order saying that a certain amount must be deducted from their salary every month for maintenance or for some sort of debt that they have, you have to do that deduction, but only if they show you that, only if they have proof of the court order. All right, so let's move on to the next one, is what deductions are you not allowed to make? And these are straight out of the determination, so it's straight from the Labour Department. You're not allowed to make deductions for training or for supplying them with work equipment. So if they break their mop and you have to buy a new mop, you can't deduct for the new mop. I know it's not a very elaborate example, but that is true. I've heard people deducting for things like that. If they break the vacuum cleaner, you can't deduct the vacuum cleaner's costs of replacement back from them. That is not allowed. Then food during working hours, you're also not allowed to deduct. This gets very interesting when they live on the property. So it means from 9 to 5, you have to feed them, but in between you do not. So everybody loves this last one, and you're actually not allowed to do it. If they've done something wrong, you can't fine them. So I've only ever heard of people fining them fining the domestic workers. I've never actually seen anybody do it because I stopped them beforehand. It's against the law. If they've done something wrong, if they've committed what we call misconduct is the technical term, then rather give them their warnings, rather speak to somebody about a disciplinary action before you start fining them, because as you now know, you're not allowed to. Okay, so the only deduction, so in terms of repayments, so let's say the previous month you overpaid them, right? You can only ask for the repayment for the miscalculation. So let's say you overpaid them 100 Rand, you can only ask them to deduct the 100 Rand back. You can't deduct more than that. I don't know who would do that, but obviously somebody has done it before for it to be in the rights and regulations that the department gives us. Okay. All right. The live-in domestic. I don't know if anybody does have a live-in domestic, but it's always useful to know. As I stated previously, you can't charge more than 10% for accommodation. And the accommodation, they have like a list of things in the determination that says that, you know, the accommodation must be weatherproof, it must have good condition, must have at least one window and one door that locks, and a bathroom. If it doesn't have a bathroom, it must have access to a bathroom. So your basic needs. This stems from a constitutional point of view, that people, you know, just be treated humanely, and that's about it. Now, a lot of people ask me what happens when the domestic resigns, or you want the domestic to leave. You've come to an agreement that she's no longer going to work for you. Now, when that happens, we have to give the domestic 1 month's notice to move out of the room and off of the property before we can start with any other proceedings. So if you have a live-in domestic and you've come to an agreement that she's no longer going to work for you, maybe speak to somebody to do this notice letter for you, because obviously it needs to have very specific things in it, and it has to give them exactly a month's notice to move out. All right, now the next point of contention that I always have is leave. And it's not just with domestics, it's a general problem that nobody understands. So let's start with annual leave. Annual leave is 3 weeks annual paid leave per leave cycle. Okay, so if your domestic has started with you on the 1st of January, their next leave cycle starts the next 1st of January. If they started on the 13th of March, their annual leave cycle starts again on the 13th of March. That's how it works. Now, 3 weeks annual paid leave. So the Act makes it very difficult to understand because it says 21 consecutive days. What does that mean? So it means that it makes provision for people who work on weekends so that they actually have more days leave than everybody else because they work more. So if your domestic works 5 days a week, they get 15 days leave. If they work 6 days a week, they get those 3 days extra, and then it gets 18 days. So it all depends on how many days a week your domestic works. All right. Or if your domestic doesn't work for you permanently, like I said before, if she's got 2 days a week with you, 2 days a week with somebody else, then it's 1 day annual leave for every 17 days worked. Okay. It sounds very strange, but that's how the department and that's how the Act works. It's 1 day annual leave every 17 worked. So, like I explained last time, your domestic cannot take leave unless you also agree to the leave. Okay. Now, they are not allowed to take annual leave and then resign, because that's, you know, it's not provided for. So what a lot of the times what the ladies do is they take leave, and then a week into their leave they resign, and then they just never come back. So unfortunately, that's not how it works. Luckily for us is if they don't arrive for their notice, you don't have to pay them, which is the nice part. Okay, so the only time that they're allowed to take leave during a notice period once they've resigned is if they are ill. And just the last point there, domestics, if they go on leave, like even mine, if they go on their leave, they tend to take all their leave at once. Please pay them before they go on leave. It actually is in the act that you have to pay them before they go on leave. All right, sick leave is the next one. For every 3 years that they've worked with you, they get 6 weeks unpaid. 6 weeks paid leave. My apologies. So how does that work? Well, the act says every 3 years, but for the first 6 months of their employment, it's 1 day for every 26 worked until they hit 6 months, and then they've got their 6 weeks leave. For example, if your domestic worked with you for 7 months and they suddenly they break their arm, no, they break their leg, and they cannot be moved, they have to stay in the hospital, you have to pay them out until they leave or until the 6 weeks is over. Okay. Now, what a lot of the times happen is that the employers will generally pay for the hospital costs or anything like that. If it happens, where they've come to you and they've asked you to assist them with the hospital costs, you can deduct that because it's an agreement between yourself and the domestic. Just remember the 10% rule. Okay, so a lot of the times you get domestics who take a chance. I'm not saying every single one of them do. There's always a general and then an exception to the rule. If they've been sick for 2 or more days, or they've been sick twice in the space of 2 months, I would suggest that you ask them to bring a medical certificate or proof that they've been to the doctor, to the clinic, to the hospital, especially if they don't live on your property because you can't see them. Yes, and like I explained previously, sick leave is the only leave that is allowed to run during a notice period after the domestic has resigned. Family responsibility leave. All right, so everybody knows what family responsibility leave is, but the normal employees that go to an office, we only get 3 days. However, the Labour Department and the Minister of Labour has decided that domestics need 5 days, and that is because generally domestics need to travel for certain things, especially for a death in the family. So it's 5 days paid leave. Anything after that is unpaid leave, or if they want to use their annual leave, they can, but they have to agree to it, and you have to agree to it. This leave only kicks in after 4 months. So if you have a lady that's been employed with you for less than that, it doesn't apply until she's worked 4 months. Okay? And she must work for you for 4 days a week or more. So if she works for you for 2, 3, 1 day a week, this leave doesn't actually apply until she works for you for 4 days a week. Okay. And just the last point, if you are suspicious, you are allowed to ask for proof. I've seen in a lot of instances where everyone is considered a cousin in the family. That is not an immediate family member. An immediate family member is mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, brother, sister, husband, wife, child. It's not cousins or anything like that. We get that one quite a lot where they've decided that all the people that live in their area are all family, sadly. As you see there, family responsibility leave is only for when a child is sick or if there's a death in the family. Now, it used to also say, you know, the birth of a child to cover, you know, the men in the relationship. However, that has changed quite a bit because now you have something called, well, everybody else calls it paternity leave. I call it parental leave, and that just works a little bit differently. All right, maternity leave. This is now where we get to the nitty-gritty. So maternity leave is 4 months unpaid leave back to back. The reason why it's unpaid is because you get UIF benefits. All right. In terms of when they need to tell you, when they're going on maternity leave, they have to give you a month's notice or as soon as possible. Okay. Leave can start 1 month before the due date. All right. And the domestic is not allowed to come back to work before 6 weeks after birth, or if she has a medical certificate from a doctor saying that she can come back earlier. Otherwise, it's the 6 weeks, okay? And in terms of a miscarriage, it's also 6 weeks from the date of the miscarriage, should that unfortunate event take place. All right, now, paternity leave is the famous parental leave everybody was talking about last year. So it came into effect last year. So this is for, generally, your gardeners are usually male. If their wives are pregnant or girlfriends, what have you. If the child is born, they get 10 consecutive days unpaid leave where they can claim back from the UIF. Now, consecutive days, like I explained, you have to count the Saturday and the Sunday in between. So in terms thereof. So then how do they notify you? They're usually very excited, come up to you and tell you, their wife's giving birth at this date. And they also need to notify you at least a month before so that you have time to arrange for a replacement or for a stand-in so that, everything can be prepared. Okay, so termination. This is your resignation clause usually. Now, notice is given if your domestic has been working for less than 6 months, it's 1 week. For more than that, it is 4 weeks notice. So some people remember it being a calendar month. That no longer applies. It's just your plain 4 weeks. So if they resign in the middle of the month, they work until the next middle of the month. Whereas calendar month obviously work from the 1st to the end of the month. Okay. Now, just for the sake of completeness, just remember on their last day, pay them everything that you owe them. Make sure you give them a pay slip that shows this is how much money you've paid them, and just keep record of it. Okay. Now, if there has been misconduct, if they did something wrong and it's a disciplinary issue, if there's a disciplinary inquiry held, this is very important. You cannot simply fire somebody on the spot anymore. If you do, you're going to make me a lot of money because then they're going to go to the CCMA and I'm going to have to defend it. Or someone like me. You need to have a disciplinary inquiry. And if the disciplinary inquiry results in a dismissal, it's dismissal with immediate effect. And that's generally how that works. I get asked the question quite frequently about theft. If you catch them stealing, first do the disciplinary inquiry, and then if it's permissible, then phone the police, please, so that at least we can get the dismissal out of the way, because it becomes quite the headache after they're arrested. The third point there is you can agree to a longer notice period. Of course you can. It works like that in your general employment as well. You just can't agree to a shorter period. It has to be the minimum of the 4 weeks. So resignation or termination, it must be done in writing. If they don't if they're illiterate, I've seen it before. It's very rare nowadays, but if they can't read or write, you need to explain it to them in a language that they can understand, that they've indicated they understood it. Now, a tip for something like that is to record it so that you have some sort of record of the resignation or the termination. Retrenchment. Okay. So when will retrenchment apply? Firstly, is let's say you move house and you live in Joburg and you move to the Vaal, and your domestic can't come with you because her entire family lives in Joburg. That would be when it applies. Or it will apply when you move from a bigger house to a smaller house and you can deal with the all the domestic functions on your own. Or if you've gone into retirement, or if you're immigrating, those are usually your things. Or if you yourself have lost your job and you can no longer afford them. Now, retrenchment is a very complex process. Please don't, I nearly said, please don't try this at home, but please don't attempt it by yourself. There is a lot of things that you need to discuss. There's a lot of things that you need to do. And please just don't try it on your own. In terms of retrenchments and what their severance is. So severance is 1 week for every completed year of service, and it is tax-free up to 500,000 Rand. Okay. That is only for the severance. So in terms of retrenchment, you're also going to give them notice and things like that. Only severance is tax-free. Okay. Now, the last point is very important. Let's say you move and your kids don't. If your children don't have a domestic and they're willing to take her on, you actually don't have to pay them severance at all because you found them an alternative position, and if they refuse, then there's no severance for them as well. But like I said, please don't try retrenchment on your own. All right, after termination. So this is when they resign, when they're dismissed. What are you supposed to give them? All right, you are supposed to fill in what is called a UI-19 form. That is the form for them to claim UIF. Okay, the UIF has made it extremely easy for you to apply online. You can do it online. All they have to do is literally go there with your little form that was signed by you and their ID, and they can claim. All right, a certificate of service. Now, a certificate of service generally is good to supply to them because it usually has your contact number, because everyone always wants a reference. Okay, you need to make sure that you've made payment of any outstanding money, any outstanding money, a leave, anything like that before they go, so that this prevents you from having any comebacks, them coming back to you saying, oh, but you didn't pay me for this and you didn't pay me for that, and making life complicated. All right, UIF. Okay, so this is probably the first question that I get asked on a regular basis. Do I need to register my domestic for UIF? Yes, you do. Okay, but there's always a but. If they don't have a South African identity number, they cannot be registered. You can try, but I don't, as far as I know, the system only accepts ID numbers when you register them. Okay, when must you register them? From the day that they've been employed with you. Okay, if you have not done that, you can still register them, but it usually comes with a fine and it comes with a whole bunch of back pay. All right. How does UIF work? I'm pretty sure everybody knows how it works. It's 1% from the domestic and 1% from you. You deduct it and it gets paid to the UIF. Okay. If you want more information or you want to register, it's very simple. They've made it very simple on their website. You can get all of the information and you can register. Okay. So What extras? So in terms of what I can do for you is we can assist, our offices can assist you with a contract of employment, a job description, certificate of service, and any advice. And this is all done at a nominal fee that I've arranged with Noah, obviously. And I'm literally just a phone call away or an email away if there is a question that you want to ask. When it comes to disciplinary inquiries and retrenchments, if you feel that your domestic's not performing well, we are there for you, and we do that as well. I've given quite a few domestics warnings in my day, and I'm not scared to do the same. So if you want to contact us in regarding to all of that, everybody knows Noah. You can contact her. You can phone the office. We are there to help you. Right. So that would be my story. I'm sorry it took so long. Are there any questions?
Simonne, I've got a question. You said that domestic can claim UIF if they've resigned or if they've been retrenched. Are they entitled to UIF if they've resigned?
No, not resignation. I apologize. Resignation and dismissal, they're not entitled to it. But for anything else, incapacity, retrenchment, there's quite a few things there, but definitely not for dismissal or for resignation.
And can you explain what incapacity would be?
Okay, so incapacity would be if your domestic is no longer able to do her job. So, for example, it comes with, I had an issue with a lady who couldn't do the dishes properly because she had carpal tunnel. And what does that mean? And incapacity is basically if she can't do her job based on her physical limitations. So that would also factor in things like old age, arthritis.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else that has questions?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a COVID question. If you have a living maid or domestic and she now wants to go home and you're not happy about that because you don't want her to travel in a taxi and mix with people that you don't know, can you stop her?
In terms of going home, I would suggest that if she really feels that she needs to go home, she can't come back until she can prove to you that she doesn't have COVID. That's what we've been doing as well. I've been advising, well, funnily enough, a couple of friends of mine. Their domestic is insisting on going home because they've got kids and they want to check up on their kids and things like that. And I told them that that's fine, but she must come back with a test that says that she's negative so that she doesn't put you and your family in danger. Otherwise, she must stay away until the lockdown is lifted.
Okay. And if she doesn't come back and you put her into quarantine, do you have to pay her?
Quarantine, self-imposed quarantine is unpaid leave, but if the employer imposes it, it's sick leave. So yes, you have to pay her if you put her in quarantine.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask you something? If your domestic worker retires, do you still owe them severance pay? They retire on their own accord.
Okay, so
at the right age.
Yeah, so retirement, you don't have to pay them a cent. I know it sounds terrible, but no, you don't have to pay them anything. They should have provided for themselves. And on top of that, they can claim from SASSA.
Okay, and one last one. During the major lockdown, for the 5 weeks, okay, if you pay them that leave, it's paid leave, then they're not really entitled to more leave during the year. If you pay them for the 5 weeks of lockdown, if they chose to go away for those 5 weeks and you pay them the full pay, that can go against their annual leave.
Yes. If you've made an agreement with them that that is going to go against their leave, then yes, they don't have leave for the rest of the year.
Perfect. Thank you. That was very, very interesting. Really grateful.
Thank you. Just excuse the cat in the background. Clearly, she also wants
and
to be.
I love cats. There's mine. She's here on my bed as well. I don't know if you could see her. No, I love cats. If you have a cat, we love you.
Can I ask you something? Is retirement the same as resignation? So you can't claim if you've actually voluntarily retired.
That's correct, because you can claim from you're claiming from a different fund essentially if you go into retirement.
So you get a pension then. So your UIF falls away if you've actually retired.
That is how I understand it. I'm not completely au fait with how the UIF works because I've never had to deal with it personally, but that's how I understand it. Yes.
I
Okay, because
actually I read not so long ago, I also was looking into it. Apparently, if they retire the right age, you can just Google it. It says that as much as they can claim their pension, if they've been deducted UIF for all the years, they can claim UIF for 6 months. But they've got to retire on the right age and they have to have been deducted UIF, yeah. Just Google it, because I did Google it not so long ago.
Okay, but now I'm having a huge problem with UIF, where my domestic and gardener are both registered, but I am behind in my payment, and I want to get it up to date. But there is no way you can email them 100 times. You can try and phone. You can nobody. I've got a number, a registration number, but it is impossible to, even before the lockdown, to actually find out what is owing to bring the payment up to date. Is there somebody who can do that for you?
Unfortunately, like I said, I don't have the required experience to actually talk about the UIF, sadly. What I do know is that their online platform has been made extremely user-friendly for you guys to go and actually look on it. I think that would be the best bet to try, and because they're never going to answer their phones. It's a government department. Us as attorneys already know that when it's a government department, you're going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
Go on to UIF e-filing, and then on there just register on UIF filing online, and then you'll see exactly what is owed, and you can pay on there, and it's got a debit pool, and it's really easy.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah. Okay. Is there anybody else?
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can.
As you can see, I'm not Lionel. I just want to know, what about this COVID story? My once a week helper has been away since March.
Yes.
And I have been paying her every month her normal wage. How does that affect, because she might come back for a couple of weeks. Do I owe her any money when she goes away again and for another 2 weeks, or what's the story there?
Okay, so in terms of as somebody who only works a couple of days a week, I'm sitting with a similar situation. My dear domestic went to Malawi on the 1st of March, and then she was locked out during the hard lockdown, and I haven't seen her since. I do wish that you phoned earlier, because you do not have to pay them at all. It's no work, no pay principle. So you don't actually have to pay them. So if she does come back and she wants to go away on holiday, you can simply say to her, well, I did you this favor by paying you all this time, and now you want to go away again for another 2 weeks, and I'm sorry, I don't have the capacity to pay you, and it's going to be unpaid leave. That's what I would suggest.
That's okay. Yeah. So I don't have to. But I think to her it's only fair that I've been paying her her normal wage for the 1 day a week that she's normally paid. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's it.
Do these rules apply to CHARs as well? So you may have somebody to come in once a week or twice a month. Do you have to register them as a domestic?
Well, it only applies when they are your permanent employee if they work more than 27 hours for you.
For 27 hours in a month.
In a week.
A month.
In a week.
No, a month. Isn't it a month?
Oh, sorry, it's a month.
Yeah.
Let me just make 100% sure. From what I understand, it's the 27-hour threshold. If they work 45 hours a week for you, then they're full employed. But if they work 27 hours or less, they're not permanently employed by you, and you don't have to register them.
So if you've got a 1 week gardener, you just got to make sure that he doesn't exceed those hours in a month.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Okay.
Right. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you everybody for taking
Thank
the time to listen to me.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think on behalf of everyone, Simonne, just thank you so much for your expertise and your time. I mean, I think for many of us, you know, we grapple, a lot of us have got lots of questions, and, yeah, I mean, I suppose it's always the balance between, you know, just wanting to make sure that we do the correct thing and that we're sensitive, but also that we also know what all of our rights are, our domestic helpers and obviously ourselves. So thank you so much. We do have a weekly draw, so just to tell you that tonight's prize is something a little bit different. It is a very beautiful wooden board that you can use for if you're having people over for coffee, hence our coffee club, or you can use it as a chopping board. And I'm going to do the draw tonight. So I've got everybody's names, but the only thing is we have a few. Could you just check what your names are on your iPad or on your whatever it is that you are on dialing in with? Because there are a few non-names. I can see there's like a Galaxy Tab A and there's one other. So just if you could just check what your name is, and if you can just pop your if that's one of yours and you don't have your name up, if you don't mind just popping it in the chat, your name, so that if we draw you, then we know that it's you. Okay, so I'm going to do a random number generator. And let's see, number 8. Oh, and it's Gloria Ash. Gola, it's yours. Hey, Gola. Can you unmute? I'm not sure if she can, but well done, and I'll make sure that you get
Thank you. I've never won anything before. Yay!
Right.
Thank you.
Right. And so, no, I wonder if I can hand over to you. We actually got 3 really exciting talks coming up our next 3 weeks. So, now, are you able to talk about the next one that's coming up, and then I'll talk to
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
I'm just quickly pulling it up. So, like I told everybody last week, next week's speaker is our marketing genius, our marketing guru. Everybody knows her. It's Karen Scher. Whenever it comes to any kind of marketing related questions, marketing related ideas, Karen doesn't even have to think twice. She's always got very sound advice. Karen is going to speak about using marketing strategy to get better results in your day-to-day life. And we are really, really excited to have Karen share her expertise with us. And as usual, we're going to have an incredible mystery prize. So it's obviously worthwhile. Like you hear, some people that have never won anything have won on our coffee club. So besides the fact that we've got such special speakers, we also have such special winners. And then the following 2 weeks, we've got really interesting, incredible speakers. And I'm going to pass it on to Aideen and she'll give you some more information.
Okay, so our speaker for the following week is Stanley Satner, and he has had a heart transplant, and he's going to be sharing his story with us. So that should be really a really interesting, exciting talk. And then I'm just going to confirm it, but I'm hoping that the following week, I mean, this is tentative, so this may or may not happen in that week. It might be the week after. Mayor Kralis has donated one of his kidneys, and he's going to talk hopefully about his experience of having been a donor, and just sharing his story. But as I say, we'll confirm that and let you know closer to the time. But thank you once again, everybody, for joining us and for your time. Once, thank you so much again, Simonne, for your expertise and your time. And looking forward to next week and the time that we can meet for not just virtual coffee, everybody, but a good cup of coffee together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We love our coffee sessions.
Thank you.
So yeah, so I decided to leave my job at Anglo because what was told to me was that, you know, this company Trillium, this is the management consulting division.
Right. If anybody wants to, is there anything else before we end? Sometimes people like to just have a little chat and a connect. Otherwise, we'll see you all next week.